The world is like a ride at an amusement park, and when you choose to go on it, you think it's real, because that's how powerful our minds are.
I can tell you from experience, the effect you have on others is the most valuable currency there is.
Don't think, feel. It is like a finger pointing away to the moon. Don't concentrate on the finger or you will miss all that heavenly glory.
You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Thomas, I have what I feel is a very relevant question for you. I've been wanting to know your insights and views on this for a long time. It's potentially a touchy subject, but fuck it. This is a question actually formulated by my fiance, and it is Donald Trump, genius, mastermind, or lucky idiot? And
wow, definitely not a genius mastermind. And the reason why I'm almost positive that that's the case is you can tell by the way the guy uses language. He structures his thoughts, his articulation of ideas is so poor that there's just a bunch of repetition that happens on the regular. You'll hear that over and over again. He tends to say things are really, really, or very, very. It's almost preacher-like in the way that, you know, the repetition happens, but I don't think it's really well thought out. I don't think that there's... You and I talked earlier about love, wisdom, and justice. And when you hear that guy speak, you can't hear any of those things in his words. And you know, you talk about reading between the lines and being able to really understand a person in a very short amount of time by the way they move, the way they talk, and the things they're actually saying. And I'm positive he's not a very smart guy.
well,
And that's and I say I'm positive, which seems really, really arrogant, but I've never met another hyper intelligent person that behaves like that. Now, there are certain pathologies where you can go, okay, this person's doing a really good job of pretending to be one way, but in reality they're like this. But there are other things, like even evil geniuses, you know, there are certain nuances that you go, wow, that person's really smart, even if I think they're, you know, despicable. But with Donald Trump, I just don't get the impression that he is very smart, you know? I don't get that he's a reader, and usually you can tell there's at least a bit of an indication there with vocabulary or the way sentences flow together. And I don't get that impression at all. Now, so you said, is he smart? And what was the other part of that question?
well, genius, mastermind, or lucky idiot, I guess, was the...
On the other hand, I don't think he's an idiot. And whether or not he's lucky is, wow, that's really up, you know, for anyone's interpretation, because I don't think he's lucky. I think he's a gross example of what a human being can become when they don't understand what 99% of the world lives like. I feel like that is a joyless man, you know. You just don't see him laugh. You don't see him smile with the kind of empathy and love that you see from... It doesn't even have to be the Dalai Lama, dude. I mean, just like a good person. That's my knee-jerk reaction because I've been thinking about it a lot, and those are just, you know, that's at the forefront of my mind. I think it's really peculiar that so many people gravitate towards him. And I'm sure I'll put together a much more, hopefully a more articulate response than Donald Trump. But let me just briefly turn that back around on you, and we'll get your impression. We can go from there.
I think that was a great answer, by the way. It was a great answer.
Thank you.
I think that perhaps linguistically or verbally, he's not as articulate as some of his contemporaries and peers in politics and business. But you have to hand it to the guy that if the political system isn't a rigged, preordained, pre-planned sham, then he has done incredibly well to rise to the top, or to get to the position that he has within that particular structure and within the workings of the American political system. You know, I don't really know too much about politics, but it's my understanding that the Republicans didn't really want him there, and he still managed.
Absolutely right.
And I think that definitely took, don't get me wrong, I know it took a lot of money, but I think it also took a lot of understanding of human psychology. He kind of knows what buttons to press among certain segments of the population. And I think that is in itself a certain kind of intelligence. I do agree with you on pretty much everything else you said. He doesn't seem very happy, doesn't seem super actualized to me. But I think maybe the bigger question we should be asking, and this is something that, again, my fiance and I discuss this very often. We both have slightly contrarian views regarding it. And that question is, the US presidential election, is it a important political event that's going to decide the future of the United States? Or is it just, as I put on my Facebook the other day, the biggest reality TV show in the world?
Great question. And I've never been polled. Have you? Have you ever known anyone who's ever been polled? And that's what's fucked up. Like, there are a couple things, polling and the lottery. I don't know anyone who knows anyone who's ever been polled or won the lottery. And the lottery is sort of a joke, but the polling's for real. And I'm 38 years old, and I've been around a long time and lived all over the place, and I've never, ever, ever, ever been polled. And man, this is going to sound really bananas, but I actually think that polling is a sham, and that the implication there is to keep people glued to this thing, which isn't really a race. I don't think Donald Trump has a chance in the world of winning the vote, and I think the polls that are coming out are fabricated to make us believe that it's a lot closer than it is, because there's no Latino vote, there's no black vote, and the majority of the women voting aren't fans of Donald Trump, as far as we can tell. But those maybe are based on faulty polls as well. I don't know. I think it's all a sham. It's all an illusion. And it is probably part of the greatest reality TV show of the year, at least. I know that the way that it's skewed as if it's a close race, the same thing happened when Mitt Romney was running. You know, it wasn't close, but it was like, oh my gosh, everyone panic because the world is at stake. And I just don't think that's the case. But I'm happy to admit when I'm wrong. I definitely don't know. And I feel like there's so much misinformation that it's hard for me to make an informed decision. I'm pretty sure that's by design.
You are. You took words right out of my mouth. That is exactly how I feel. Exactly how I feel. But also, I could be wrong. I could be wrong. Like, it could be important, and it could decide so much about the course of geopolitics over the next however many years. But I don't know, man. I don't know. Just the more George Carlin said it best. He said, "The world is." I'm paraphrasing. The world is a circus, and being born an American is like having a front row ticket. And I kind of just find it fascinating, and it's almost fun to watch. You know,
it's an addiction, man, and it is super entertaining, but I don't think it's healthy. And Ashley and I have been talking about this very thing. It's like I can't stop looking at the coverage. I can't stop looking at the comments between his supporters and other people who are, you know, and the Hillary supporters, or the people that are supporting Jill Stein and Gary Johnson. I also am just appalled at how, appalled is the wrong word. I'm not appalled, I'm not offended. I'm just a little bit surprised at how up in arms and emotional people get about it, because, you know, they're pretending like this is their family or something. People are so desperate to be a part of a tribe that they're like, you know, you can't say that about my, you know, tribal leader. And it's really just very primitive. The whole thing strikes me as very primitive. And if there are intelligent life forms paying attention. From outside of Earth, they're just like, man, these guys, they're just not ready. They're not ready.
Interesting. You know, for probably as long as have known me, I've had, I would classify I don't even want to say I have political views, but if someone forced me to like categorize my political beliefs, I would say I would always have been leaning more towards libertarian
Sure.
Camp, and in the last couple of years it's gotten even more anarchistic. I don't know why I've always had this inherent resentment towards and mistrust of all hierarchicals, or almost all hierarchical structures and almost all bureaucracies. I think it comes from growing up in South Africa. I went to a public school, and I was, even from a little age, I was just appalled at how unintelligent, unoriginal, and inefficient this governing bodies and the authority structures within the schools were. And I think I kind of extrapolated that out and projected that onto local and federal governments of pretty much all kinds. And I've always looked and that's also like colored my view of politics in general. I've always just had a disdain for it, and I still largely do to an extent. But something happened to me recently here in Thailand, of all places. It's really started to shift my perspective a little bit, and that is that I drive around on a scooter here, right? Like I rent a scooter when I'm here, and it's one of actually my great joys of being here is I love riding around on the scooter. It's an amazing feeling of freedom. But a few weeks ago, I went with a group of friends. We were all on our little scooters going for a day trip somewhere, and there was heavy traffic getting in and out of the city. And I remember I was sitting in this traffic, and I started to feel strange, like just started to cough a little bit, and I felt like lightheaded, and I just started getting this weird headache and just felt like shit basically. And I got home, and the headache progressed and became more intense, and then I was pretty sick actually. And the next day I got this really bad cough that stayed with me for a couple of weeks, dude, like really shitty cough. And I spoke to my business partner, who's a doctor, and told him the symptoms, and he just said straight up to me, "You had carbon monoxide poisoning."
Wow.
Yeah, and fuck, dude, that hit me, and I realized that I looked into it a little bit more and realized that there's no emission standards here, right? And for the first time since I can remember, I felt a shift in my perspective, and it didn't shift 180 degrees. I'm not going to be like pitching up at any political rallies anytime soon, or like becoming a politician myself, but I started to realize that these structures that are at least attempting to do something for the general social good, whether it's something like the EPA or the FDA, I mean, there's definitely a place for them, man. I mean, the reason I got sick the other day is because those things, or some of those things, don't exist here. And as much as I love the sort of Wild West cowboy town, like freedom to express yourself feel, something a good friend of mine said a long time ago. He said, people are only truly free when they're safe. And it got me thinking, maybe I've given the whole. This ties into something even deeper, right? Which is, the conspiracy theory, the biggest conspiracy theory of them all, the mother of them all, is a New World Order, right? That there's this move towards this one world government, and what they're trying to do is dissolve national borders and boundaries, and eventually have us put all under the jurisdiction of this mega, all-seeing, omnipotent mega power, right? That's the mother of all conspiracy theories. And I've been thinking about it a lot. It's always terrified me. I was always very anti the New World Order, and I started to think, maybe it's not such a bad thing. Maybe it's not such a bad thing, and maybe one of the reasons all these secret societies which are comprised of highly influential, highly intelligent, highly successful people, maybe they're pushing for that not because they're greedy, but because they know something about human nature, and they realize that left unchecked and uncontrolled, we're this pretty savage rabble that is not going to put catalytic converters on our vehicles and is going to rape women and children and steal and pillage and plunder. And I'm not entirely convinced of this perspective, but it's just started a shift in my mind. What are your thoughts on that?
Wow, that's you just went deep there. All right, well, off the top of my head, I don't think that if there is any such new world order, it is being done because of any intrinsic benevolence. I really don't think that it would be, you would bring together the most powerful people in the world because they wanted to take care of or save humanity from themselves. I think the only reason that would be done is to, maximize profits, minimize revolutions, and really to just strengthen the control that they already have. I would love to believe that it's because we have to save these these poor creatures from themselves. But if that were the case, there wouldn't be booze, there wouldn't be cigarettes, and I just wanted to touch on this earlier when you were saying people are truly free when they're safe. Sort of. But I think like for African Americans walking in the United States, no one feels safe anymore, knowing that, watching all the folks get gunned down by police lately. And I know that's super contentious and both sides, etc. But I think there's a perception that we're very safe, and you and I are probably more safe than a person of color, for sure. But I don't think anyone is, above getting offed by somebody else. And that's like super dark, and I don't know how I went down that path. I just wanted to say that I don't think everyone feels, super safe. I heard somebody talking about how being in the in a part of Los Angeles was scarier than actually being in the wilderness, with wild animals, because people can pull out guns. Anyone can have a handgun in this place. And as far as that mother of all conspiracies, I don't know. I mean, I think there are a lot of super smart people in power that are trying to make the world a better place, but I don't think they're involved in politics, or at least it doesn't seem that way.
Mm-hmm.
Where are the super smart people that are breaking their necks for those jobs? The ones that have an incredible track record of giving to humans and building things for the betterment of society, and then they're like, you know what I'm going to do? Politics. Because I totally agree with you that I don't see anything about career politicians that makes me go, yeah. I bought that the last time with Barack Obama in 2008, and it was such an about face of everything we'd seen before, in terms of a politician. It's like, wow, this guy's like really capable and articulate and super fucking sharp, you can tell, and just smooth. I was like, this guy's like, he's a fucking cool guy, but that makes him an exceptional politician, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I know I sort of went off track there, but how do you keep up with and I meant to ask you this a bunch, but how do you stay on the front lines of the biggest conspiracies? Is there a specific site that you go to that you're like, now this must be the most trustworthy speculation?
Man, I'm trying to dial it back actually, because there was a point a few months ago where I went pretty deep down that conspiracy hole, and then it was like, you're scared to bite into an apple because of pesticides, or you're scared to walk outside because chemtrails, or you're scared to. Life just becomes this thing that's out to get you when you go down that hole, and I just realized it's not the kind of life I want to live. So now when I listen to conspiracy theories, it's more for entertainment. It's not really for seeking seeking clarification or seeking an answer. It's just a bunch of thought experiments that I think it's good to keep your mind flexible. And there is a podcast called The Higher Side Chats, which is hosted by a guy called Greg Carlin. It's quite fun.
Listen to that about the
Medicine and vaccines.
The vaccine.
Yeah.
Very, very, very exceptionally interesting episode. And I know we're getting close to time, but the problem with, so you talked about emission standards, and there is a place for those, and I agree. The problem is there are no integrity standards, and so that is why we are constantly, scrapping at each other back and forth, because there isn't a set metric that everyone has to reach in order to say, well, actually what I say and what I do and what I think are all in alignment. There's no standard for that, and it's not a requirement. And that's what will always make, until there is, I think it very challenging to look at people who are clearly lying or clearly cowards or clearly flip-flop on something. Makes it hard to go, yeah, I can get behind this person.
Nah, dude, you said it. That to me is pretty much everything that's wrong with politics and why I don't engage with the system. My brother, that was a great conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed that. Thank you very
Likewise.
much.
Thanks for stretching my mind, my man.
Guys, please head over to the Digital Communion Facebook page, which is facebook.com/digitalcommunion, and give us a like. And also, if you head over to iTunes and give us a review, we have seen the reviews start to jump up. Really appreciate that, guys. It does mean the world to us. And remember, you can also email your questions for Thomas and I directly through the contact form on our website. So if you just head over to digitalcommunion.com and hit contact, you'll be able to get in touch with us there. We always write back. Thomas, until next time.
We're all alone in this together.
1,000 blessings in you, my friend.
Likewise.